is recording started. Okay, hey, how's it going?
Doing amazing.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm putting a little paper together of redefining veganism. I sent that to you, and we're going to talk about that.
Let's do it.
Before you mention your first thoughts on it, I made a huge mistake going into this actually because I had issues with the original vegan society definition of veganism, and that's a big part of why I was doing this. And I want to at least share my thoughts with a push towards it being more of a philosophy and less to do with specific actions. And then after I wrote this and sent it to you, I was doing a live stream with somebody, and we were going to talk about the definition, and I looked up the definition, and I realized that the part I thought I made up that I sent to you was in the original, which is the word seeks. I think the word seeks is so important there because seeks means there is no actual action happening.
Right.
And that's the most important part to me. Obviously, I want people to do the action. And if somebody claims that they are of the vegan philosophy, but they eat animal products, there's going to be a lot of explaining to do. But anyways, the reason I was putting this together is the word seek. So there's a good chance I'm going to change a lot based on that. And I might just have the paper focus on how I think we should respect the word seeks in the original. But anyways, yeah, go on.
Well, seeks, did you use something similar, didn't you?
I
You
used that thinking
word.
I created that. I thought I made that up.
Oh,
and
okay.
Seeks was
Oh, I
in the-
gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. I thought the original said does not exploit and so on. And
Gotcha.
so it's declaring that if you do anything to exploit animals, then you are not a vegan. And but instead it says if you seek to. And anyways, yeah.
Interesting.
We could talk about that element if you want before we talk about what I wrote, if you have thoughts on that.
What do you think the difference is?
I think the difference is that at least on paper, they wanted the world to view it the way I'm writing it. The way I'm saying that if you extend what's my words? Hold on one second.
Moral consideration?
Moral consideration is what I was looking for. If you extend moral consideration to non-human animals, then that's what matters, and then everything else is just a philosophical conversation. If somebody says like, "Oh, I think I need to eat meat to be healthy. I haven't been convinced I don't, but I extend moral consideration to animals, so I won't eat unhealthy meat products like hot dogs and chicken nuggets or whatever," and somebody else might say like, okay, so I know that animals, we shouldn't take their dairy, but I'm addicted to this. So I know it's wrong. I'm going to work towards not doing it, but I'm eating cheese. A lot of people want to be vegan, but they have that hump of cheese they got to get over. And that's a funny image. So in my mind, just holding that philosophy, and you're either born with it or not, you can see an animal and you can go, if that thing was suffering right now, I would care, unlike a person that is unable to care. And that's kind of just how I view the philosophy, whereas most people view it as the actions you take. As soon as if you're vegan for 2 months and you fall off the wagon, then you were vegan and then you were not, and then now you could be vegan again. And I almost think the falling off the wagon doesn't matter.
I do think a lot of people think of it that way. It's like, yeah. So in your mind, the thing that would have to change for them to not be vegan would be the underlying mindset or philosophy of extending that moral consideration. So under the I don't know what it's called. Is it the Vegan Society or something? Under their definition, they use the word seeks, right? Seeks to exclude something as much as practically possible or something, right? Seeks to exclude, what is it?
So I'm gonna send it to you right now. This is the full definition.
Veganism is a philosophy and a way of living which seeks to exclude, as far as possible and practicable, all forms of exploitation and cruelty to animals for food, clothing, or any other purpose, and by extension, promotes the development and use of animal-free alternatives for the benefit of animals, humans, and the environment. Interesting environments in there too.
Okay, so the part in the middle where it gets to any other purpose, I believe that first half is what was created initially in the 1960s. And then the addition that adds the environment and human stuff, which a lot of people don't like, and I too do not like, that was added, I believe, in 1988 by the Vegan Society, but it was just an addition.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like, well, wait a minute. Like if we found out that being vegan had a 1% impact negatively on the environment, would we all of a sudden abandon it as a philosophy? Like I wouldn't. But yeah, anyway. Okay, so which seeks to exclude those things. Exploitation, cruelty and cruelty is what it looks like, right? Those are the active words there.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you say veganism is a philosophy that seeks to extend moral consideration to non-human animals on the basis of actions unwanted by each animal, such as harm and physical force. So yours differs from this in the way that yours is unwanted actions is your criteria for whether an action would fall into the category of like should not do this to animals, and they define the things, which is exploitation and cruelty.
Yeah. Well, before we delve too far into that, actually let me explain one thing about why I think the philosophy should be how it is, and then I have a question for you, or a comment at least. I kind of view it like any other philosophy, whether it's a religious philosophy or not. If you take like a religion like Christianity, if somebody believes that they believe in Christianity, they are a Christian. That is their philosophy they follow, and they believe that it's wrong to have sex before marriage. And then when they go and have sex before marriage, they feel like they did a wrong thing, but they didn't become a not Christian while they're having the sex, and then they started over. They're born again the next day. They just they have a philosophy they follow, but somebody might call them a bad Christian in that moment, or if they continue that act, they're at times a bad Christian or something, but they are still a Christian. So it'd be like if a vegan ate steak, they'd have a lot of explaining to do, but they're just they hold the philosophy. So anyways, that's I wanted to throw out that example because I think that's something worth thinking about.
Yeah. Just super quick, I think it's fairly semantic. It just comes down to how you're defining veganism, and I'm fine using either one for the purpose of discussion. Like veganism, it can be a philosophy, and then the your mindset towards those moral principles and the alignment thereof is like the thing that matters. But we also say things like, is it vegan too? And it's like we are referring to it as an action. So I think it's just like, depending on the context of how you're using the word, I think that and the same with Christian. Is it Christian to have sex before marriage, or like whatever you said?
Yeah.
It's like, no, it's not, but it doesn't, but you can still have the Christian like underlying mindset and beliefs and do a bad thing or whatever. Not that I think that's bad.
Well, and anything being Christian to or vegan to do something, the majority might have an opinion that's similar, but then others might not. So somebody could say, is it vegan to eat meat when you know you don't need to? And then everybody will agree on that. But somebody could say, is it vegan to eat roadkill? And then some people like David will say, no, it's not, because you're using them. That is an animal, and you're using them. And so that's why I think it would just be different philosophical conversations on the topic.
Sure.
But I think that is a good point about the action. But let's go over, I'm curious your thoughts on the word exploitation, because exploitation essentially breaks down to the word use. But do you think there's a difference there? Like, do you think it's necessary to use a word like exploitation versus using the word use in this definition?
Do I see a difference between those two words? Is that what you're asking? I don't think so.
Yeah. I just
exploitation maybe entails like more of a self use kind of does too. I was going to say selfish, like a selfish sort of like reason for doing the thing, but maybe use does too.
Yeah, well, like you can use a car, but if somebody usually wouldn't say exploit a car, like so it's almost always negative. And so I thought it'd be interesting to discuss that, just if you had any other thoughts on it, on if anyways, yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to get over that element, if that changed much at all.
Yeah, I mean, specific, like I don't know, it doesn't really matter to me. I think like when somebody says the word use in the context of animals, I think they are basically meaning exploit. Like they
Yeah.
are meaning a selfish use. Like, yeah, that's sort of like that's how I interpret the language.
Yeah.
If you're asking about like what I think about whether exploitation should be a part of the definition of veganism, it's an interesting one. I think it should be, and I know it's not as a part of yours. Like
I just happen to not use it, that
okay,
word, but I guess what I'm wondering is, if it said the word use, would you wish it didn't and it said exploitation, or would you
I think
feel
it's more
like
clear.
it gets more clear? Okay.
Exploitation is less. The word has less variety of uses.
Yeah.
Whereas like use, it does mean a lot of things, and I think it can mean the same, like a similar thing to exploit, but
Hmm.
exploitation is a more clear word, so I do prefer it.
Yeah. 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 Well, and then it also makes you wonder, maybe an element, like if you lived out in nature, and you're very familiar with nature, you have a cabin out in the wild, and let's say that there's cows roaming around the way deers roam around, and so there's manure everywhere, but just randomly throughout the forest, and you had a garden, and you knew they weren't using that manure. If you took that and used it, you're using the manure, something that left their body, and
Yeah.
that they're not clearly surrounding. If they saw a person and goes, "Don't touch my manure," that's a different story. Um, does the word use fall into place there? I'm trying to bring it to
Hmm.
extremes of how maybe David
Yeah.
might
Yeah.
have said
I
about
wonder
that.
how he would answer that question. I don't see an issue with that at all,
Yeah.
personally. Like yeah.
Because you're not exploiting them, you're exploiting something that came from them. Same thing if
Right.
a cow walked up to a bowl that was sitting on the floor, and the cow just randomly was able to milk itself and shoot milk into a bowl, and then the cow left. It's like, you could drink that. You could drink that milk. You just can't make the cow be in a spot and then tug on the cow to get the milk.
Yeah. Yeah, we're kind of trying to put into words how our intuition, like, because on the flip side of this, I think it so let's assume that we are able to like genetically modify cows into the future such that they love being milked, and like they love everything that happens to them in the dairy industry, and they have like better lives than humans have, and like it's a totally only positive experiences. I
Mm-hmm.
still think that is not a good thing. I think that like my values aren't just on the suffering, it's on the rights violations, and I think
Mm-hmm.
that like freedom and slavery or whatever, which it sort of is like entailed by exploitation, like I
Yeah.
think those are subsets of that word. I would not be cool with that, whereas it's
Okay.
like in a similar way, like why wouldn't you, they don't care that they're being milked, they actually love it,
Yeah.
and they um but I see that as different from the living out in the wild, taking the poo of the wild cows that
Mm-hmm.
don't care about the poo, because you're not you're not infringing on their rights at all.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what about this? Okay. So you might have heard me talk about this, but you build a cabin in the woods. There's a doorway. There's no door. A wild wolf dog thing comes up. It likes you. It plays with you. It goes in your house, um, and then it can leave at any time. There's no door. So we got the ultimate vegan future version of a pet.
Mm-hmm.
But it can leave at any time. It can go back and forth. I haven't figured out if I extend that idea to something that involves almost more forceful physical contact. So let's say you find a horse in the wild, and the horse is, see, you don't break the horse down, you don't train the horse. The horse is wild, but it happens to be a relaxed horse, and you're petting it and it likes you, and you're aware of this idea that you could be on it and ride it. If you like gently, like let's say you're kind of up in a tree, and the tree's at a perfect height that the horse comes up to you and its face is right there, and it's kind of it's in a way where you can just gently hop on the horse, and there's no saddle. The horse can obviously go, I don't like this, and kick you off, but they seem to not care. It feels just like How to Train Your Dragon, riding that dragon, where it's liking it.
Kind of
It's just
nudges
running
you
around.
on almost.
Yeah. I'm unsure how I feel about the idea of
Yeah, I
hopping
don't
on
know
something
either.
that doesn't want it. But then again,
Wait, that doesn't want it? If you knew it didn't want
or
it, I
sorry,
would say
sorry, sorry,
it's
sorry. That
that you
you
don't know if
don't
it
know
wants
if
it.
it
Yeah,
wants
yeah.
it. Sorry, yeah, I worded that weird.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
Yeah, and so, but here's one that's almost seeming more disturbing, but it's almost more clear that you're giving it the ability to let you know it doesn't want it. What if this cow that gave birth and its calf dies, but the cow still has some milk in it, and you're petting the cow just like you're petting a horse, and and then you just get your head down to its udders and you just start like drinking from it like it's your mom or something. It's a weird image, but just looking at the rights element of it, is is there much difference between petting this wild dog, petting this horse, petting this cow, where your hand touches it, the fact that your mouth is on it? As long as you're letting it, it's not tied down, there's no threat at all. You're not like training it to like this food you're offering it and then only giving it to them if they let you drink their milk. There's no threat at all, and they can walk away anytime you're doing something uncomfortable. It's
Yeah.
kind of, yeah. So, anyways,
Yeah,
what would
well,
you?
in that specific example, as far as I know, that like dairy cows, the way they live right now, produce a ton of like more milk than a cow than their calf can even drink. So, if you were trying to just take care of a cow, you would need to milk it, or there can be health problems that arise.
Mm.
And I don't see it as too much different. I guess it's like if you milk it into a bowl and drink the milk, or if you're actually like doing it the way that a calf would.
As long as they're not tied down. But let's remove that element. So cows are currently bred to be able to produce more milk. So that's not really a natural thing that you would come across if we had a more perfect world and this was a wild cow. And then
But you
also
still said there's excess milk. Like the calf dies, so the cow has excess milk, and they're like if you're
well, and just like any other mammals, the milk's there for the baby, and even if it can be painful, the milk dries up and it's gone. Like when moms like wean their babies off of milk. There are weird techniques where you can put cabbage on the breast and it makes it it takes the pain away. Yeah, it's weird.
Okay.
You should look up. Well, anyways. But anyways, mammals in general, the milk will dry up once the calf's done. But I feel like any action that takes place without force, I don't know. Yeah, but it doesn't matter if you're sucking on the udder or if you squeeze it and catch it in your hand and go like that or whatever. I just don't know if I feel too concerned with something where there's no force of it to stay there. It can walk away at any time. Yeah, it almost comes down to the ethics of how humans should treat each other. Should we always ask consent for every bit of physical touch with another human, or is it reasonable to have a societal norm where you go on a date with somebody and you get the nerve to like put your hand on their leg or to hold their hand without talking to them? Now, if they don't want that, they can pull it away and say, hey, don't do that. And then if you try to hold their hand after they said that, then it's harassment and you go to jail and get a restraining order. But is it immoral to take cues from people and touch their hand without them giving permission, and how much different is that to go to a cow and maybe get some of its milk out when there's no force?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, in the sense, I think the difference is in the way that consent is granted, like through with another human, at least an adult human with a functioning brain. We can be certain that we have consent for an action, even by sort of an implied societal norm and like failure to correct you, like by pushing your hand off the leg or whatever. If they don't push the hand off the leg, that's sort of the implied consent. And it's like we have the societal norm that says like, yeah, it's probably okay to, instead of asking, a way to ask is by just doing it and like being okay with it being pushed away, or like paying attention to body language, that sort of thing. Like, I think that like we can get that is still an action where we are getting consent. Whereas with an animal or a child or something, it's like you can't be certain of consent. So that doesn't mean there's not things. So that's the difference. And then the question of whether you can do things without consent. Yeah, obviously you can do some things. Like I think your example with the wolf walking into your house and you play with it or whatever, like I don't see an issue with that at all, like personally. And if milking a cow and drinking the milk is sorry, in the example where the calf dies and there's like a cow that has excess milk or whatever, I think that's probably fine. Like I'm picturing just like an animal sanctuary or something where you took a pregnant cow into the sanctuary and the calf died at birth or something, and the cow produces milk. I don't know. I don't really see an issue with people even drinking that milk. It's not contributing to the demand for animal ag and like bad things to happen to animals. So it's like, the reason I don't like the word exploit, or sorry, not that I don't like it. The reason I want exploit as part of the definition is to not set up the situation where we have the cows that want to, it's weird. There's a philosophy book I read like a few years ago called The Pig That Wants to Be Eaten. And it was just a collection of like moral quandaries and things like this. And I think the first one of which the book is named after is The Pig That Wants to Be Eaten. And it was something pretty similar to that. It's like, if you could somehow get a future generation of pigs, or even find a pig or something that like wanted that and wanted, like, that does not align with my morals. Like, I don't want to create that situation. And so it's like exploiting is kind of the only word I can think of that eliminates that situation. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's
Well, I'm just starting to wonder if I like I was starting to think that the definition doesn't need to change. I just want to write about how we're using it wrong by ignoring the word seeks. But now I'm starting to, I think mine needs to change. I think the notes you sent me make some good points on changing a couple elements. But I think the unwanted part is very important, because one thing I heard a handful of people talk about when it comes to having like a rescue pet is it really comes down to what's in your mind. If in your mind the main thing you care about is taking care of this thing that couldn't be taken care of any other way, then that is vegan. But if you get more out of it than you are helping, then it's not. But I don't know if that's true. So with your dog, if you get this crazy joy out of it, and similar in the story I had where you have an open doorway and a wolf comes in and it loves playing with you, but you love playing with it. No,
I don't agree. I'm with you on that. I think like it's all that.
So unwanted
the only
almost
reason
needs to be
the
there.
only reason to pay attention. No. Oh wait, your position is like it doesn't matter if you get lots of joy out of it, right?
No, because what I'm saying is there's nothing wrong with getting joy out of it and wanting it, and as long as the animal you're getting joy out of doesn't not want it. So I think it's important to point out that if you get an overwhelming amount of joy out of playing with this wild wolf, that doesn't change anything. What matters is if they
I agree.
don't want it and you're hugging your wolf and they're trying to back up and you don't let go, it matters if it's unwanted.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think like the only valid consideration with people that hold the view that like you shouldn't get more out of it than the animal or something is like maybe you just need to be cautious in those situations where you're getting a lot of joy out of something, such that you're paying attention to what's going on the other side of things. It can be like, yeah, but
Well, I think this is what most people do, and I'm guessing you probably don't. People get joy out of their pets and they want to make sure their pet is also well loved and gets joy out of their life while they're seeing it, when they're interacting with it. But when people are at work and they have to like leave their pet behind, maybe they don't have a partner, maybe they don't have a big backyard, it's out of sight, out of mind. It's like I'm not imagining how my pet is suffering in this crappy area. And every individual is different, and people have different amounts of land and that kind of thing. So
totally.
yeah. One thing I wanted to also try to break down about this definition is it was written a while ago, so it was in the 60s, and people use words differently over time. One of my favorite movies from 1941, The Wolf Man, when somebody finds out about a man turning into a werewolf, he calls it fantastic, because by definition, fantastic's referring to fantastical things, crazy wild things. Where now, I don't know if it's different in Canada, but at least me growing up in like the 90s in the US, the word fantastic almost solely was used as a teacher telling you did a good job in school. So the word fantastic kind of has shifted over the years. So I don't know if the word practicable has shifted over the years, but there is a slight difference, but possible and practicable are almost seem completely synonymous. And so, do you think it should matter, and we should look into what those words meant back then versus now, and why they would use both of those words?
No, I don't care about the history of like anything. I would just rather just
same.
reinterpret. Yeah, like I'd rather the vegan society just like look at the way we use words now and what we want for like what definition we want, and use the words that exist now to just like create the definition that aligns with your underlying moral philosophy.
So if the vegan society proposed two options right now, if they said they were going to remove possible or they were going to remove practicable, either one, not which one would you prefer them to remove, but if they were to remove either, would either of those options make you go, no, I wish it was both? Do you view those words different from each other?
As far as practicable, not really. Not materially different. I don't know. Okay. Maybe having them together, like I do actually. I think in the way that actions are derived out of the moral system, I don't think there's going to be many changes. I think, but it does add a little bit of clarity. It's like, yeah, do everything you can as much as possible. But also like if it's really like practicable, just sort of like entails more in terms of like the actions as they pertain to your daily life. In my mind, at least, it's like possible, almost like there's different modalities in which that can apply, and like there's like metaphysically possible, logically possible, like empirically possible, or whatever. I might be screwing up the uses there, but like there's possible kind of like transcends different modalities, whereas practicable sort of like brings it down to your daily life. This is what we're talking about, in my mind, at least.
Well, does the word
so like as an example, like we may be living in a world where it's we only have two choices or something. One choice where we kill all cows, and the other one where we exploit them for another few years as we transition to veganism. It's like, which is like, well, those are the only two possible ways to get to veganism, is like continue exploiting the ones that, like, if the whole world aligns on veganism, it's like, what do? Like, we could kill them all to stop the suffering, or like we continue factory farming, or I don't know. So if there's only two options possible, it's like, well, we're picking the option that's possible. We're picking the better of the options that's possible. That's kind of like how I view that word. And then practicable is like, if you're out in Thailand or something and it's like you can't find vegan food for like 3 days and you're about to starve or something, it's like maybe that's a reason for an exception to the rule. I don't know, something like that. That's kind of how
because that sounds to me more like practical, and from my understanding, so practicable basically just means possible, where practical would be like what's a reasonable thing to do in a situation, where practicable is, can you do this? Is this thing possible? And so that's kind of what I meant when I've looked up the differences. Even reading the differences of the definitions, it just seems like two words were created for the same meaning.
Okay, fair enough.
So, but yeah, you might be right. It's a lot of words have slight differences, and it really comes down to what we mean by them, anyways, because we use language to understand each other. So practicable could mean horse for all we care, as long as we know we're talking about a horse.
Right.